Hello, and welcome back to the Animal Communicator and Healer Summit. This is the place for aspiring and established animal communicators and healers to connect with animals, to connect with their abilities, and to connect with each other. I'm your host, Dr. Kara Gubbins, founder of the Animal Wisdom Circle and How to Talk to Your Pet, the proven four-step system that teaches anyone and everyone how to connect intuitively with their pets or with any animal. And today we have Ann Allen with us, and we're going to be talking about pet loss grief. Ann Allen is an advocate for real and honest recovery from grief. She has a very unique approach that is not therapy, but it gets her clients unstuck and back into their lives again. Her mission is to end the idea that grief is a taboo subject. When she's not helping people or animals, she's relaxing with a binge-worthy TV show or doing something creative. And fun fact, she adores speed. And ever since she went skydiving, nothing is fast enough for her, at least here on the planet Earth. And you can find her at healyourgriefhealyourlife.com. Welcome, Ann.
Well, thank you so much for having me here, Dr. Kara. I'm very excited to be here.
I'm so glad you're here because I think this is such an important topic. And I think it's one that doesn't get talked about enough. And I think you feel the same way.
Yes, I'm probably a little crazy, but I get very passionate about grief and about helping people understand what it really is and, very importantly, what it isn't.
Yeah, okay. So let's start right there. Actually, yeah, I want to hear your story about how you became an expert, and then let's go with what it is and what it isn't, because I think
Oh,
that's really a
boy.
great place to start. But let's back up a step and tell us your story.
Oh gosh. Well, you asked the word expert, and when I think of the word expert, it reminds me of people who have done something for a little while. They usually know what they're doing, but very importantly, they found out what people need and what they want, and then they help deliver that to them. So I guess you could say that over the last 12 years I've been doing this, that's really how I've been delivering my things to people, by knowing what they want, what they need, and bringing that to them. My journey started about 12 years ago now, when I was working as an RN at a hospital in LA, and one of my colleagues said, "Hey, Ann, I think you'd make a great grief recovery specialist." And I was like, "Well, I have no idea what that is, but sure, I'll come along and talk to you about that." So long story short, I went and did the training, and it changed my life forever. It it really gave me things to think about. It gave me a new vocabulary. It gave me a new way of looking at how we interact with each other and how we can help each other. And I'm just so pleased that I did it. And I remember at the time we had like 3 therapists in our class with us. And literally at the end of the class, I'm not kidding, they had their mouths wide open. I said, "Wow, why doesn't everybody learn this?" So I get very excited that I can bring it to people and help them with it.
I love it. So let's then start with, what is grief and what is grief not?
Oh, thank you so much for asking that question, because there's so much misinformation about this out there, Cara. So first of all, grief, there's many different definitions, but the one that I like to use, grief is the normal and natural emotional reaction to any loss that's significant to us. And when I say normal and natural, it can be anywhere from all of the feelings that we're experiencing, from anger, frustration, confusion, hatred, resentment, to euphoria and joy and happiness. So a lot of people get very confused about what grief is and isn't, but that's the one that I like to use, that it's a normal and natural reaction to all the conflicting emotions caused by a loss that's significant to us.
And so what is grief not? What trips people up and they think it's grief, but it's really not grief?
That's a good question. And it can be a very fine line sometimes defining what grief is not, because sometimes people just simply don't know where they are. They could be having a reaction to something that is normal, like you lose your car keys, for example. You're going to get angry, you're going to get frustrated, you're going to get scared. Now, some people can grieve over that because it is a definite loss to them, because now they have to go and do something something about it, and that changes their routine. And I would like to, at this time, if I may, give the example of what loss is so that that can really help people understand it a little bit more. Now, this is a long winded explanation of what loss is, but I think it really helps people understand. So, loss is described as the end of or change in a familiar behavior or pattern related to a person, place, or thing. And when we think about that, gosh, there's over 42 different losses that can come up just with that alone. The obvious thing, of course, is death and divorce. Those are the things that people usually equate loss with most frequently. But if you look at the fact that it's a difference in how we relate to people or things, or it's something's been taken away from us and that's significant to us, we will grieve over it. For example, people when they get married, it's a very happy time, but it's also actually a time for grief, and people can't really wrap their heads around that. But it's because something has changed, their life has changed, their relationship has changed. So anytime there's a change in our life that's significant to us, there's a likelihood we are going to be grieving over it.
So any kind of change can be considered a loss, and anytime there's a loss, there's going to be potentially some grief.
That's it. You got it.
So what does that look like for people when they are grieving? What does it look like and feel like?
That's a really good question. Again, everybody is different. And I just want to make a statement. People can write this down if they like because it's very helpful. Every relationship is unique, no exception. So, because of that, we're all going to be grieving in different ways. And this is a really key thing to take away with you. Everybody is going to have a different reaction to a loss. Now, if it's something that's specific to you, okay, that's fine. But if there's a family that's dealing with a loss, every person in that family is going to be dealing with that loss differently because every relationship is unique and therefore we have a different feeling about it.
So grief is a natural, normal process. And if somebody isn't sure if they're grieving, what would be some of the signposts?
Well, some of the things that it's easier sometimes to realize that you are grieving, but some of the things that they might find, for example, if they're reaching out excuse me, if they're reaching out to somebody who's no longer there and they're feeling an emptiness, a despair, there's no joy in their life, or there's fog, confusion, they could be acting out, they could be pushing others away, they could be trying to be strong. All of those things may be a sign that they may be grieving, or they could be reaching out to somebody who was never there and they're still not there for them. All of these things could be a sign that they're just not being able to engage in their life again, that they're not finding the joy that they once found.
And I've heard this, and I don't know if it's true, so I want to ask you because you're the expert. Are there distinct phases of grief that you kind of go through in order?
Okay, phases or stages?
Either one. I don't know. Is there a
Okay.
difference?
That is a great question. Thank you so much for asking that. This is very confusing to a lot of people. There was a wonderful doctor, Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, back in the 60s, and she observed that when people were receiving a prognosis, which is not good news from your doctor, that she noticed and started to see that people were going through different stages. And it's called DABDA: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Now, this, of course, was related to people who had just found out that they were going to die. And indeed, a lot of people go through those particular stages when this happens. But over the years, well meaning professionals have tried to apply that to grief. And as a result, we now have people who try to fit into those
Hmm.
pigeonholes, into those so called stages. So I would like to say no, there are no stages to grief. But all of those things that I just described, the denial, the anger, the bargaining, the depression, the acceptance, they are all emotional reactions, and they are quite real and very much may show up in your life when you are grieving. But there are no distinct stages to go through, but you may feel all of those emotional reactions we just talked about, and you could feel them all within a minute. You have this emotional roller coaster that goes along. So no stages, but definite emotional reactions.
Okay, good to know. And now we've talked about grief in general now, but you also specialize in helping people who are grieving the loss of their pets. So
Yes.
why is this so important for people to grieve those losses?
Well, gosh, first of all, animals are my passion, as I know they are yours. And what is so very sad is that pet loss is something that's so misunderstood and so undervalued. People really don't understand why anybody would grieve the loss of an animal. It's sad, but it's true. I'm going to share with you something that really hurt my heart when I heard it. A lady came up to me and said, "Anne, I just want to let you know that I went to a grief support group and I told them that I was there grieving over the death of my husband, but I was too ashamed to tell them I was actually grieving over the death of my dog." I think that just really hits home and lets people understand that there's so much that people need to say to their pets, so much that they need to release, so much that they need to do when their animals have passed. And others just simply don't understand. I hear it all the time. Well, it's just an animal, just a cat. You can go out and get another one. But what about the love? What about the bond? What about the life that you had together? Why is that not as significant as anyone or anything else that you've had in your life? For most people, animals provide a way of love and self-expression that nothing else or no one else ever can do. So there's a different kind of a relationship that happens between our animals. And for those of you animal lovers out there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They get into our hearts like nobody else can. And for us to not be able to express that can just be devastating. And it just keeps us in a state of isolation a lot of the time because we don't know what to do with our hurt. We don't know what to do with our pain. We don't know how to get back into our lives again.
So, grieving, what would be a thing that people would do to support themselves in that process? Is it like let yourself cry, let yourself be happy? What are
Absolutely.
some things that people could do to really allow that grieving process to move through them so they can go through it?
Absolutely. All those things that you said are absolutely correct. And one of the hardest things, because we're dealing with animals, is to get over that stigma of it's hard enough for people alone to be able to express how they feel in their grief or to show the rest of the world how they feel. And especially with an animal, it really intensifies that for them. So first of all, to give yourself permission that it's really okay to be grieving over your pet. It really is okay. It's okay to feel this way. It's normal and natural, and to understand it is going to hurt, and it's going to hurt for some time. Nobody can take that pain away from you. But please find a place, find a way that you can cry, find a way that you can talk and speak about how you feel, express what you're going through, express what you're feeling. And we sometimes find help in the most unlikely of places. It's often the people or the places that we think aren't going to help us that can be very supportive. So keep that in mind too. But yes, talk about it as much as you can, as you feel comfortable with. Understand that when you cry, it's okay to cry. And some people are so scared to start crying because they say, I can't stop or I won't be able to stop. You will. you'll stop. I actually had one of my friends, just as a fun little side note, she called me. She was going through a divorce, and it was just absolutely heartbreaking for her. And she said, Anne, I just got out of the shower, and I've been crying in the shower for over 45 minutes, and I have no tears left. And I said, well, you're very dehydrated. Go get some water. but, but my point is, the body will do what it needs to do. And if we don't find a way to express ourselves, it will come up somewhere else. And it's very important to know that for every grief that we have, if we think of it like a pancake, if we have a grief, if we have a loss, and if that loss is significant to us, we're going to grieve over it. So now we have a loss. We haven't done anything with it. Now we get another loss that's significant to us, and we're grieving over that. We haven't done anything with it. Now we get another loss, and it keeps going, and we end up with this stack of pancakes. And if you can imagine the thick maple syrup coming down on top of all those conflicting emotions that we have for every single loss that we haven't dealt with, it becomes an absolute mess. So it's really important that when we do have a loss that's significant to us, that we do grieve and we recover from it. Otherwise, it'll just end up that big old sticky, gooey mess of pancakes, which of course are quite delicious, but not emotionally.
Well, and it seems like if that happens, that if you do start to, grieve a loss that's current, you might also be processing some of those other pancakes that are mixed into the whole stack.
Oh my gosh, you bring up an excellent point there, Dr. Kara. Absolutely. Oftentimes when people have a new loss, it triggers the old ones, and then they wonder why everything's just, oh my gosh, it's just blowing up out of proportion. They can't think, they're confused, they're driving around in a fog, they don't know how they got from A to B, or they're angry, and they're biting people's heads off and they don't know why. But yes, absolutely, it has a domino effect. Absolutely.
So do you have to heal the most recent loss to be able to heal those older losses? Do you have to go like backwards in order to heal all of that, or can it all happen at the same time?
Great question. No, you do not have to heal your most recent loss. The method that I use, the grief recovery method, we've been using it for over 40 years, and it's always like magic to me how well it works. Part of it is to actually go and define the losses that we have had, and then look at the very significant ones that have been keeping us stuck. So those are the ones that we usually focus on first. There's nothing wrong with healing the most recent one, of course, but oftentimes it's something quite deep that we're not aware of.
That sounds like really powerful work.
It really is, and it's not therapy, and it's something that can be done in a very timely manner, which people really love. So, and it's action steps. It gives people something to do, because most people, when they're coming to me, no matter what it is they're grieving, they're so distraught, and they're tired of talking about it and feeling about their emotions. They want something to do.
Yeah, take your mind off it a little bit, but in a really proactive, helpful kind of a way.
Absolutely, yes.
I love it. Well, what about our pets? Do they grieve a loss like we do when they lose a companion?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's just one of the hardest things to see animals grieving. I had a very poignant thing happen many years ago when I was back in my homeland of New Zealand. There had been a semi truck that had just sped down the road, and there was a single duck just right on the edge of the road, and as the semi went past, its mate had been killed. And I remember this little duck just waddling across the road and just looking down at its mate, and my heart just broke, because the expression of that duck just said everything. Now, animals don't need to talk, although of course we know we can communicate with them, but they really don't need to talk. And it's the same thing with people too. You see the grief, you feel the grief from them. Yes, they most definitely do. But the thing is, they grieve in ways that aren't perhaps common to us, or that aren't perhaps comfortable to us.
So what do you mean by that? Like we won't recognize it, or it's just different?
Exactly. Exactly. Because some of the ways that people grieve, oftentimes they can act out. And it's like, why are you behaving like such a jerk? Well, your animals can do the same kinds of things, do things that are very uncharacteristic for them. And it's like, why is he doing that? Why is he being such an idiot? You know, we can expect the obvious ones. They might sleep more, they might not eat as much, they might not drink as much, they might just be feeling glum or, you know, don't want to engage. Those things we would take for granted, and we would think, okay, well, they're grieving, they're sad, they're missing their companion. But it's the behavior that we're not expecting. It could be that they start peeing outside of the litter box. It could be that they start pooping on the floor by the doorway. It could be a whole lot of behavioral things that could come up that really scare us, because, you know, when our animals do things that we don't anticipate or don't understand, it can scare us. So it puts us into a state of not knowing what to do as well. So we have to just be a little bit more zooming out, if you like, looking at the bigger picture of what could be the problem here.
So I love what you're saying, because I really get the sense that if somebody, you know, isn't sure if they're grieving, or they're not sure why, maybe it's not that they're not sure that they're grieving, but maybe they're not sure why they're being so short-tempered with everybody, or why their dog is acting so weird now when they never barked before and now they're barking at everybody,
Yes,
or something like
yes.
that. And I feel like what you've shared is going to just help us open up our awareness, so we can see from that bigger picture of like, oh, it doesn't look like grief what I expect, but it could be part of that whole process for myself or for the animals in my life.
Right, absolutely. And then we have to understand that if they have lost a companion, it's probably our companion too. So we're going to be having our own reactions. And sometimes those reactions can scare us, how we're reacting to our grief. And then the animal's going to be having their own reactions, plus they're reacting to our reactions. And it's just,
Sounds like it can get pretty messy.
you can get extreme. You know, that's the whole thing that I really love people to understand, that grief is messy. It's very messy. It's inconvenient. It's messy. It throws our lives on its heads a lot of the time. And we just don't know how to deal with it.
And I love that you're there to help people to navigate through that and make it maybe a little bit less messy, or at least if it's messy, know that it's the same way for everybody. It's always comforting to know.
Right, and it's really one of my passions to help people with grief. It is, because once they understand what it is and what it isn't, and how we can get through it, then they have major shifts, and I see them blossoming, and that's a real gift to me to be able to do that, to help people like that.
I love that. And do you have any final words of wisdom that you want to share with our viewers?
Yes, I do, actually. Again, I just want to reiterate some things that we have said, but just know that grief and loss is a normal part of life. It's very important to understand that. It's not easy, it's inconvenient, it's messy, and it takes us completely out of our comfort zone. And now we have to learn different ways to deal with it. Another thing, you can't take away someone's pain. You can't take away your animal's pain, unfortunately, and that's the hardest thing to have to deal with. Another thing, if you're going to help somebody to grieve, or your animal or yourself or whomever, remember to put on your own oxygen mask first. You can't possibly be there if you're not taking good care of yourself. And then, very importantly, there's no time frame for things to get better. There are no stages for things to put yourself into, to try and make yourself normalize this, because it's not going to be like that at all. And very, very important, if you think somebody is going to hurt themselves or somebody else, please take immediate action and call 911. And if you are not sure, stay with them and then decide if you need to call 911. We haven't talked about this, but it's a very real thing. And I would advise everybody to make sure that they have the National Suicide Line hotline phone number in their phone just in case. And finally, forgiveness is a great and wonderful tool, and it helps us to give up the hope of a different or better yesterday, the way things were or the way that we wanted them. But please know that the pain does not go away with time. You need to take action. You need to do something to recover from it.
Otherwise, you end up with a big sticky mess, a pancake of grief.
And it might taste good, but it doesn't feel good.
Yeah, avoiding is not ever effective. So take action and take
Yes.
care of yourself.
Yes.
And Anne is going to come back for a bonus interview, and she's going to walk us through 5 different ways you can help yourself as you navigate through your grieving process. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But just so you know, there are tips, there are tools, there are ways to do this. You can get help from Anne and other professionals, but there are some things you can try on your own as well. Anne Allen, thank you so much for being here. And you have a free gift to offer to our viewers. Do you want to tell people about that?
I do. It's called the Get Your Life Back Assessment. And if you go onto my website, I believe you'll have the link there for it, Dr. Cara. Just click on it. And on the home page, you'll see down the bottom, there's a wee button that says, Take your Get Your Life Back Assessment. And when you click on that, you'll get the assessment. You'll also be signed up to be on my newsletter, which will give you some great featured articles, some more tips along the way, and let you know of any speaking engagements, etc., that I have. And then while you're on the website, you can just scroll down, and if you click on the button that says Tell Me Your Story, that'll take you to my calendar page, and you can actually sign up and we can talk for 30 minutes for free, and you can tell me your story and I might just be able to help you.
Beautiful. So there is a button on this viewing page that will take you directly to that free gift to get back your life assessment. Start there. Visit Anne's website at healyourgrief-healyourlife.com. Anne Allen, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Cara. Thank you very much.
And thanks everybody for being here and being part of the community. I want to just quickly remind you that you can get your all access pass. So you can listen to this interview, Anne's bonus interview, and all of the interviews in the summit anytime you want. You get lifetime access to all of this. So I was going to say supplies. There's no supplies. All of the information, all of the insight, all of the content in the Animal Communicator and Healer Summit. And the price goes up after the summit ends, so be sure to act now to get the best value, and come back and join us in the All Access Pass membership area for Anne Allen's 5 ways you can help yourself through grief. Thanks again, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Anne Allen, for sharing your tips with us today. Bye, everybody.